Hi. Oh, and Vicki just joined us. Vicki, take your time. Hi, everybody. This is Ashlyn with Grants in Action Together, and we have a few people with us today. We're going to do a virtual women's event because of COVID and because our board is sick and it's freezing outside. So, Jelena, could you imagine if we were doing an in-person event right now in this weather?
It would be really terrible. It'd be painful.
Wow, it was like 2 years ago, like yesterday. Yeah, so we have Jelena, who is my co-founder, and she is professor of philosophy at Coastal Carolina University. And we have Ty Williams, a GSAT board member. Ty does a lot at CCU. I don't know if you want to talk about what you do at Coastal real quick.
What don't I do, Ashlyn? I do a lot of outreach. I've noticed like being in South Carolina, I'm from New York, that I didn't see anything really other than GSAT in my area. And I was like freaking out. I was like, how do people know at the school where to go get an abortion pill? Like these aren't things that I had to worry about until I started at Coastal. So I started the Social Justice Club there, where we're actually right now tackling like anti-CRT legislation on campus and working with the Homeless Period Project on getting menstrual products out into the community and possibly implementing in all the bathrooms at Coastal, which is become to be very political, but hopefully we'll be getting that done before I graduate. So
that is awesome. That's awesome. And we have Ebony, who's going to speak a little bit later. But Ebony, if you want to introduce yourself and talk about your work and then also the bail fund that you're a part of.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ebony Hughes. I am in Georgetown County, and I'm basically just a community activist and entrepreneur and mother. I wear many hats. I am I'm on the board of the bail fund. I am 30P for the Georgetown branch NAACP. I am on a number of different boards, including the new local PFLAG in Pawleys Island. So that's just, I'll just stop there because I don't want to run on, but I just really care about people. And if you can boil it down in one word, I'm just a humanitarian, and I'm excited to be here today. Thank you.
We are super happy to have you. Vicki, I don't know if you want to turn on your camera so we can see your beautiful face. Hi, there you are. All right.
Got the beautiful face part. It's a Saturday morning. So, well, it's not morning, but it feels like morning on Saturdays.
With this weather, it absolutely feels like a horrible Saturday morning. So.
It's pretty to look out, but I don't care anything at all about getting in it. You know, those days ended when I was in college.
All I have are icicles on my shrubs out in front of my house. So I don't have any snow.
It's pretty much melted here. Yeah, I'm in Columbia or Lexington, so it's kind of melted here. But I'm Vicki Ringer, and I'm with Planned Parenthood South Atlantic, located here in South Carolina, and I'm their lobbyist and director of public affairs. So I do a little bit of everything. Jack of all trades, master of none.
Yes, and it's a perfect day for this because I realized the other day it's the 49th anniversary of the Roe v. Wade decision. So
today.
It's a great time to bring you on to talk to us about the bills that are in limbo and also the Supreme Court case. So there's I think 2 different bills right now. So just let it rip. Tell us what we need to know. And
okay, so you want me to go ahead? Terrific. I'll tell you about the bills, and then later on during this program, my brilliant colleague, Alison Horatio, will be joining you, and she will tell you all about what you can do to help fight these bills and what our mobilization efforts are around this fight. We got word late Thursday that the Senate Medical Affairs Subcommittee would hold a hearing on 2 abortion bills on Wednesday. at 9 a.m. So it's, 4 days notice, a weekday, school day, expecting people to show up during a pandemic. But that's intentional. We know that. But the two bills that they will be debating on Wednesday, the first one and the most harmful one is Senate Bill 988, which we know kind of in jargon terms as a trigger law, meaning that if Roe is overturned or moderated in any way, then South Carolina will ban all abortions in this state. They make one exception, and that's to prevent the imminent death of a pregnant person, not the health. It's not intended to save a woman's health. If she is at risk of losing bodily functions, organ function, an abortion is still not acceptable. She must be on the verge of death as determined by a doctor. And then at the same time, the only way that an abortion can occur is if they try to save the baby at the same time. No matter how far along she is in her pregnancy, they have to take all steps to try to preserve that fetus. And just imagine if that's at 10 weeks. There's nothing that can survive at 10 weeks, but doctors must take those steps. The punishment for attempting to obtain an abortion, if a doctor attempts to perform an abortion, if a woman does a self-abortion at home, the penalty for that is murder. And the punishment can be life in prison without parole or even the death penalty. So we're talking about a serious bill here. In addition to banning abortion, it declares, it sets the law for personhood, which we have fought so many times before. It declares a fertilized egg to be a whole functioning, living, breathing, born human. And that has a lot of consequences. If a pregnant person drinks a glass of wine or goes skydiving or snow skiing, she could be charged with child abuse or neglect. There are a lot of potential possibilities. South Carolina is already the #1 state in the nation for punishing pregnant women based on the outcomes of their pregnancy. So if a woman has taken drugs or had alcohol or smoked during pregnancy and a baby is born addicted or unnecessarily small or has any other type of problems, a woman can be put in jail for that. And South Carolina has done that more often than any other state in the nation. We don't help women who are pregnant. We have the 8th highest maternal mortality, which means women die here more often than they do in 42 other states. We have the 5th highest infant mortality, meaning babies that die in their first year of life. And not one single bill has been introduced to try to improve those outcomes. We tried to get a maternal mortality implicit bias training bill passed last year, and Republicans would have none of that. So just in order to pass it, they had to change it to a study committee to be able to just study why we have maternal mortality rates as high as they are. And still 46 Republicans in the House voted against it. It's pending in the Senate now, but 46 Republicans voting against studying why people die during pregnancy and childbirth, it's unfathomable to me. But that bill is certainly, while it would not necessarily go into effect right away, it would go in effect the very second that SCOTUS hands down its opinion in June if they overturn Roe. And speaking of SCOTUS, while we're on that topic now, I'm sure you're all familiar with the Dobbs versus Jackson case. They heard oral arguments in December, and that's from a Mississippi law that bans abortion after 15 weeks. Right now, the law of the land based on Roe v. Wade is viability. And viability means when a fetus can survive on its own after leaving a woman's body. So in most cases, that's the earliest that is at about 24 weeks. And even then, it's just a 50% chance. But that's how viability is defined, is a 50% chance of survival. But even then, at 50%, it's pretty hard to save a 24-week-old. Even in today's improved medical science, it requires millions of dollars of health care to keep a baby alive at that point. And most of us can't afford that. Even with the best insurance, it's going to cut off. But I digress on that. The Supreme Court is expected to hand down their decision on that case in June. We know that with the 6-3 majority and how they have allowed the Texas ban to stand, our chances don't look good for abortion remaining legal. In 26 states, we expect it to be banned instantly. The options that are available to the Supreme Court, they can overturn Roe completely and send it back to the states to be decided. They can allow states to pass pre-viability bans, which means they can set it at 12 weeks, 15 weeks. I don't know what kind of arbitrary rate they'll give it at, but that would allow abortion to remain mostly legal, but would allow states to set earlier cutoff dates. Or they could let Roe stand. I don't expect that. I fully expect them to make severe and harmful changes to abortion laws in this country. So women based on their zip codes will be forced to suffer, while we have some states that are strengthening their abortion laws, like New Jersey, New York, California, Maryland. How we wish legislators in the South were as concerned about women's health as they are about abortion. So that's one bill, Senate 988. The other one is Senate Bill 907, and it's referred to as an abortion reversal bill. I refuse to use that terminology because there's no such thing as abortion reversal. It is a medication abortion misinformation bill. The most common method of abortion in South Carolina right now is a medication abortion. It can be performed up to about 10 weeks of pregnancy, and it requires taking 2 medications. Even though it's entirely safe, South Carolina law requires that the first medication be handed to you in person by a doctor. A nurse can't even hand it to you. It has to be a doctor. And that pill is taken there at the health center. And then the woman is given a packet of other pills to take home and take it home and she can take it at her comfort in privacy of her own home within 48 hours. The first bill blocks progesterone and it prevents a pregnancy from continuing. And then the second bill causes the uterus to contract and empty all of its contents like a period. And at 10 weeks, it still looks like a period. The anti-abortion folks would have you think it's a fully grown baby. It's just tiny. They love to hold up those little tiny baby dolls. It's not fully developed. It is just heavy blood clots. And that's all you would see when you completed the abortion at home. So what they want with that bill is that at Planned Parenthood and other abortion clinics, including hospitals, which do perform abortions in South Carolina, to provide a statement to patients to take home with them with those second pills that says, if you changed your mind and you want to reverse your abortion, you can call your doctor. And what that would require is massive amounts of progesterone, which is a prescription. You have to take massive amounts. I mean, not like one pill, it's a lot, in order to continue the pregnancy. This is so dangerous that when doctors attempted a clinical trial to determine the safety and effectiveness of that method, they had to stop it mid-trial because women began hemorrhaging to death. and had to be rushed to the emergency room for life-saving measures. So they couldn't even continue the trial to determine how safe that was. So this bill would require doctors to tell patients that they can reverse their pregnancy, which goes against all medical standards of care, ethics, science, reality, and forces doctors to tell patients something that's just not true and could be dangerous to their health. It's passed in quite a few states. I don't know if we'll be able to convince legislators that this is not a proven method and that it could be dangerous, but we're going to try. We are lining up people to testify now on Wednesday. The thing about personhood in that first bill that I talked about, and declaring a fertilized egg to be a person, is that a fertilized egg, you're not even pregnant when the egg is fertilized. That happens to us all of the time. And it never develops into a pregnancy because it doesn't implant into the uterus. It must implant into the uterus before we're pregnant. So about 50% of fertilized eggs are just shed naturally, like you would with your period. We never know we're pregnant. No inkling whatsoever. You can't even test to see if you're pregnant with just a fertilized egg. So any harming a fertilized egg would mean we ban legal, acceptable, normal methods of birth control, including IUDs. What an IUD does, the way it works, is it prevents that fertilized egg from implanting in the uterus. As somebody once said, it makes the uterus a hostile environment for a fertilized egg. So IUDs would be banned for everyone. Now, how they would treat people who already have them, if you would be locked up because you are hostile to fertilized eggs, that's questions we're going to ask of legislators. There are some hormonal birth control, like patches and rings and pills, that while the typical method is it prevents ovulation, so an egg can't be fertilized, some pills do work by also making the uterus unable to accept a fertilized egg. So some pills would be banned under this. Now, the lawmakers who wrote this bill added a sentence that says this does not impact contraception. Contraception is defined as preventing ovulation. So, they've defined it. And unless that contraception prevents ovulation, it's going to be banned. But they'll argue that it doesn't apply because they don't know how birth control works. They don't know how our bodies work. It's amazing how many women who have given birth can't fully explain the process. The women that are legislators that want to dictate what we do with our own bodies. Just stay the heck out of our personal business. You worry about you and let us worry about us. So those two bills will be heard on Wednesday. Based on who the members are of that committee, I fully expect it to pass out of there. The three Republicans are very extreme hardliners on abortion. So a subcommittee is made up of three Republicans and two Democrats. The two Democrats will fight hard for us, but already they're at a disadvantage on the votes. We do think we can be successful at full committee where there are 16 members. And some of those are moderate Republicans who have opposed personhood in the past, not only because of the way it treats birth control, but also because of the way it treats IVF, in vitro fertilization. Because all fertilized eggs are considered people, IVF doctors will have to preserve all eggs and maintain them in a frozen environment. And one of the state's most noted fertility specialists is located down in Charleston. And he's testified before that there's not a freezer big enough in the world to maintain all of the eggs that they have to retrieve to fight for one pregnancy. And he says, you know, what if the power goes out and I lose my freezer? Can I be charged with murder? And the answer is yes. Though he's had no fault at that at all. That's just how extreme this bill is. One bill that we're already fighting, it's already had a hearing, is known as the Medical Ethics and Diversity Act. It's a religious right of refusals, meaning you can refuse to treat someone based on your religious, moral, or ethical beliefs. If you are opposed to abortion, you can refuse to treat someone who's having a spontaneous miscarriage, because that's actually known as a spontaneous abortion. You can do extreme measures to force a woman to keep that pregnancy. You can refuse to treat LGBTQ patients. And of course, we've made the argument there is already existing law that says no one can be forced to perform an abortion, period. They don't have to have a religious reason or a moral reason. They just can't be forced to perform an abortion. And so that's been the law of the land for almost as long as Roe's been around. And the methods of treating LGBTQ patients are very specialized. The sponsor of the bill said that doctors could be forced to provide hormone therapy. Well, he actually said hormone replacement therapy. And I said, no, that's what I'm going through as part of menopause. It is not what you provide to transgender patients. That's not hormone replacement. That's hormone therapy. But nonetheless, they don't know about that either. He said doctors are forced to provide hormone therapy. No, there's a very small group of physicians and specialists in this state that provide care to transgender patients, and none of them are forced to provide hormone therapy. It leaves us open to so many things. You know, if I'm opposed to premarital sex because of my religion, I could refuse to provide prenatal care to a single woman who wants to have a baby. There are a lot of different circumstances. I could say that I think redheads are the mark of the devil, and my religion opposes that. Ebony, I'm going to pause here because I can ramble. So I'm going to take a breath and let you ask your question.
I have a question. And the information that you've given so far is just, it's overwhelming, it's baffling, it really down to the wire. It doesn't make any scientific sense. It doesn't make any common sense in what's going on. So now we approach 49 years of Wade versus Roe is being challenged. In our Constitution, church and state should be separate.
Exactly.
Okay, that's the first thing. I'm not here to criticize whether it's wrong, but it seems to be that people who are conservative impressing their own religious views into this. How can anyone speak up on really the line should have been drawn at that point? Is that something that can be argued?
It has certainly been argued about with regards to all sorts of medical care, but they insist that it is not a religious argument. It is medical, that science has advanced, that we know when life begins. And if life begins at conception or fertilization, then our argument is that we don't have the right to take that away. And they say that the Constitution, which provides for life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, is the very first thing that we have to guarantee. So then it becomes a definition of what is life and what is a person. And that's why they are attempting to redefine what a person is in law. Right now, law is you must be born. Everything occurs after birth. We don't get to claim a tax exemption. We don't get to get child support. Nothing happens until after birth. But they argue that that's when life begins, and for law, and so religion doesn't play a role in that. Of course, we know that that's just their way of skirting that issue, because the Jewish faith, as it says in the Bible, is that life begins at first breath. So there are quite a few religions that say the woman's health is first priority, and life doesn't begin until birth. So until birth, the woman gets to decide, and they get to determine what happens going forward. Let me open this chat over here so I can see.
They are just questions for you, so go ahead when you have time.
Yeah. Did I answer that for you, Ebony?
Yes, that was a great explanation for that.
I mean, really, I teach this issue every semester in my ethics class about the definition of personhood. And philosophically, there is no correct answer. Like, there's points that you can identify as this is a reasonable point at which to think that you're a person. This is a reasonable point. There's conception. There's, when you're able to, survive on your own. And then there's birth. And those are all different points. And people have very good arguments for why all those could be considered the right legal place to identify. The great thing about Roe v. Wade is that it identifies that philosophical difference as being the reason for why you can't force one answer onto the entire population. And therefore we have to reach a compromise position. So I think that, I wish that judges and people who were thinking about these issues carefully. Right now, what's going on is that the personhood argument has been just, really, really co-opted by the right to just say there's no other point that you could be considered morally considered or legally considered a person. And clearly that's just not right. There's lots of other places that we could identify as the point at which you become a person. So, and that's one of the things, that's one of the reasons I think Roe v. Wade is such a great piece of legislation, is that it acknowledges the complexity of that. Absolutely. So I have faith, but maybe my faith is a little bit, I'm just trying to have faith in the legal system that better heads and better arguments will prevail, but we have to do what we can to stop this.
If Roe v. Wade is overturned, then ultimately it will be left to the states to decide. And until we get rid of all of the extremists in the legislature, we don't stand a chance. And sadly, we have too many women who have had abortions and want that option for their daughters, granddaughters, sisters, whatever, or for strangers that vote Republican without knowing their ideology on this issue. We have a huge population of uninformed voters. They think that their legislators are moderate and wouldn't dare dream of overturning this. But we know that that's not the case. A couple of other questions I see. Is the medical community speaking out about this? Yes. We do hope to have a few doctors there on Wednesday, but as you might imagine, Wednesday morning at 9 a.m., they've all got to cancel patients and appear, and that's not easy either. So most of their speaking will be done in writing to individual legislators, but we don't just need doctors. We need everyday people to say, don't do this to me. I'm a voter, I'm a taxpayer, I have equal rights in this state. Don't do this. So everybody's voice is important. And then, Annette, you and I both know the legislature can do lots of crazy things. But right now, what that medical diversity Senate Bill 811 does is just says that no doctor can be forced to provide health care or a particular service or procedure if it conflicts with their own personal beliefs. So they may believe that hormones for menopause could be a violation of their ethics. And so they could deny that. They could deny all sorts of care. They could deny end of life care because only God can decide when people can die. And they don't want you to be addicted to drugs when you are dying of 4-stage terminal cancer. So no pain medication. It is, and refuse all of our DNR orders. You know, if we are terminal and at the end of life, they can refuse to honor those orders. There's a lot they can do, and that would include prohibiting hormone treatment of any kind to anybody for any reason. Can they deny service based on religious affiliation? It's for life. Or yes, Catholics in Catholic hospitals now refuse to do an abortion even when a woman is dying. And they don't have to tell you where you can go to be treated. Women die daily for that reason in pregnancy. They can perform a miscarriage or DNC once there is no longer any heartbeat of a fetus. And that's all that Catholics can do. But there are quite a few instances of women dying in Catholic hospitals. They were septic, their organs were shutting down, but the fetus still had a heartbeat. So they could do nothing to save that woman. I have gone over my time. So
I have a quick question that I just
Okay.
thought. What do you think about people who are watching, talking to like their own doctors about this? Just like, hey, you know, how do you feel about this bill that is going to potentially affect your, you know, the services that you can or can't give? Kind of getting, especially, you know, it seems like a lot of doctors maybe in Columbia or in Charleston are more outspoken or like more tapped into the political stuff, but I don't know that a lot of doctors in Horry County, for instance, or maybe Georgetown County participate in these types of things. What do you think about?
Most doctors will hear about these things through their associations.
Mm-hmm.
So obstetricians and gynecologists are kept informed through the American College of OBGYNs, the South Carolina Medical Association, the American Medical Association. They'll hear about what's happening in Congress in Washington or at the State House in Columbia. They'll hear about it. But for many of them, they probably aren't thinking, how does this impact my practice? From the beginning of me going to see doctors, they've known how I felt about everything. I don't hold back, as y'all might imagine. When I had my daughter, and she's 28 years old now, and I was pregnant, I think that one of the Bush, or maybe it was after she was born. Yeah, because Clinton was president when she was born. Yay. He was talking about supporting one of the Bushes. It was probably George W. I said, you do know that he wants to ban abortion. He said, Vicki, we have always had abortion. We will always have abortion. He said, before Roe v. Wade, we provided abortions. We just called them DNCs. So, but those options were only available to established patients by doctors who knew those patients well and knew that they weren't going to get told on. Those weren't available to everyday people or all people.
Right.
Which forced them to go underground, travel to New York in many cases, if they could afford that, or seek out the services of a midwife who knew about, you know, certain concoctions and procedures that could cause a self-abortion.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, the doctors are going to have their own political leanings, but I certainly think that particularly as it affects the provision of healthcare, the South Carolina Medical Association has come out and said that they certainly believe in the right of conscience for all doctors to provide the level and service of care that they deem appropriate. They don't think that doctors should just refuse to treat someone without referring them to another doctor who can see them. So they've maintained that position. And that's a good middle of the road option, is that you might refuse it, but you must tell that patient where else they can go to get the care they seek. And they also argue that, well, emergency care must be provided. Our definition of emergency care is very different than what you probably think of it. If a gunshot victim shows up in your hospital, you must make sure that their blood pressure is maintained and that you can effectively stop that bleeding for now. You don't even have to remove the bullet, and then you can transfer them straight out. Plan B is not an abortion pill. Plan B does prevent implantation. So yes, it will be outlawed. Plan B is not an abortion. What Plan B is before you're even pregnant, it doesn't cause a fertilized egg to be shed from the uterus. So in other words, it doesn't end a pregnancy. It prevents a pregnancy from happening by not allowing a fertilized egg to implant in the uterus. And there's an awful lot of confusion about that. But Plan B would be outlawed by personhood bills.
Okay. Well, and I know you mentioned about other forms of birth control that would be legal still and some that would not. Do they even know? Like,
they don't know how birth control works. They do not.
Like, are they going to rip the Nexplanon out of my arm? Like,
they could, or force a doctor to remove any IUDs. They could grandfather those people in, but you would not be able to get a new IUD in South Carolina. You would not be able to get an implant or injections. You would not be able to get birth control pills that stop implantation. But they've got that little statement in the bill that means that says this bill does not apply to contraception, but then it goes on to define contraception as something that prevents ovulation or fertilization. They don't even acknowledge that some birth control operates by preventing implantation. So we've had those discussions before. They still don't get it. They still don't get it. Margie Bright Matthews has 4 children, and she has, fortunately for us, been on the committees that have taken up abortion bills. And she says, I get so tired of telling you guys how this works. She says, I've had 4 children. One, I've never known prior to 6 to 8 weeks when I was pregnant. And I know what I'm looking for, because right now we have a abortion ban at 6 weeks, which has been blocked by the court. But, that's only 2 weeks late on your period, just 2 weeks late on your period. Most of us will, unless we're trying to get pregnant or have very regular, like clockwork periods, 2 weeks late is very common now, particularly with women who are very athletic, women who are taking birth control. There's all sorts of reasons why you won't know you're pregnant at 6 weeks. So to ban it, and Margie says, y'all don't even know how this works. I've had 4 kids, and what y'all are saying, that ain't happening. So they truly just don't get it. They truly don't. Allison, y'all, is going to be on later, and she can answer any other questions. And Ashlyn knows how to get in touch with me. I'm putting my email in the chat. Feel free to reach out with other questions, but I've got to jump to my next meeting because we are talking strategy about how we defeat this. Thank y'all. I appreciate you joining, and great.
Thank you so much. I'll see you later.
Thank y'all.
See you.
Y'all too. Reach out.
Perfect. Okay. So on Facebook, I put the way that people can testify against these bills. There's the option to testify in person. If you are in Columbia, that would be amazing if you could be there in person. If you aren't, but you're retired, also amazing. Carpool, go in person. If you are, a student or a parent of young kids, or you work, there is the option to submit a letter. Unfortunately, they're not doing virtual testimonies for this, so you can submit a letter. All of this is in the comments on the Facebook page. And if you aren't watching on Facebook, if you're watching on YouTube or Twitter, just ask me and I'll give you the information. But we will have another member of Planned Parenthood on in a little bit, and we had a couple questions that Vicki didn't get to answer, so we'll see if Allison can. I know that Ty and Jelena, Ebony, and I will probably have more questions for Allison, who also is a county council member of Richland County. So she is doing it all. She's fantastic, and we're excited to talk to her. So we've got another guest, Bev, from the Democratic Women's Council of Horry County, on just to hang out with us. If Bev wants to turn her camera on and say hello, and then we are going to hear from Ebony on her work that centers around women. But Bev, why don't you introduce yourself since you just joined us, and just talk kind of about what the Democratic Women's Council does and what you do and anything that's on your mind.
Okay, I wasn't expecting this. I just spent 4 hours in a retreat this morning, so I'm a little bit brain dead. But the Democratic Women's Council of Horry County is actually part of the Democratic Women's Council of South Carolina, and part of the National Federation of Democratic Women. We basically are focused on women's issues and supporting women candidates, in trying to get more people to vote, especially women. We believe if women vote, Democrats will win. And of course, we believe in a woman's right to choose. I don't know any Democrats that don't believe in that, but Catholic or not. So it's a woman's right to choose. It's not an issue about whether you believe in abortion, but an issue as to whether you believe it, whose choice it is, as we all know. We meet every month, and we also have a variety of other activities going on. We currently just started a scholarship program, and we believe in a lot of the same things that the Grand Strand Action Together believes in, and so we certainly are supportive. That's about all I have.
And I don't know if you've been connected with Ebony yet, but she's about to speak and talk about her work, but you all might want to connect. Ebony, okay. Go ahead and get on into it.
Well, first of all, I do appreciate given the opportunity and the invitation to come on and talk with you ladies today. It's an honor. Definitely a tough act to follow, with Miss Vicki. She was able to spit out all that information, and she was just proficient in what she knows, and it's just pretty amazing. It opened my eyes even to some things that I didn't even realize how deep it goes. I realize now that really women's rights are under attack, and not just under attack. I'm talking about nuclear war type attack. So again, my name is Ebony Hughes. I am actually representing today the Free Horry County Bail Fund, which is a organization that is subsidiary to Seven Dimensions Outreach. And essentially what we do is we raise money to bail people out of jail. It is just that simple. That's what the organization does. Why would we do something like that? Because if you understood the statistics around bail and people who are incarcerated because they could not make bail, some people who even may have minor offenses are in jail right now awaiting trial. Some people's trials could be a year, maybe even 2 years from now. And because of the pandemic, we all know that the court systems are backed up, and in the meantime, that still doesn't stop new cases from coming in, people who cannot afford bail sit in jail awaiting for trial, sometimes for minor offenses, and it's sad. So basically what it's saying, it points out a very in your face of the have and the have-nots. If you can afford to make bail, then you can commit a crime, a minor offense, and you can go home. But if you're not able to afford that, then you sit in jail. And that affects people in a very, sometimes they may lose a job. So if a person loses their job, they may lose their home, then they can't take care of their kids. But when it leads down to women, specifically when it comes down to bail, and about 60% of women that are in local jails are incarcerated right now, are in jail just because.
Looks like we lost Ebony. Looks like
Yeah.
she's back now.
We are still in the middle of a winter storm, so we apologize if you're not watching from South Carolina. I literally have icicles outside of my bushes, and it's still raining, so we may have power issues. Ebony, I think the last thing we heard was women who were waiting to be bailed out of jail, who were, incarcerated, not in prison, but in jail waiting for trial. I think that might be
right. That's
yes.
right. Local jails. Can you all hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay.
I can hear.
All right, perfect. About 60% of women who are in local jails are there just because they can't get a trial. And part of that, if they're waiting a trial, that means that they could not afford bail money to get out so that they can go home. And with that being said, 1 in 4 children, getting back to women are the primary caregivers.
I think we may have lost Ebony again. Let's see if we can. Ebony? Ashlyn, are you trying to get in touch with Ebony?
Yeah, I am just sending a text to see if
If she can
yes.
get back on. She told us ahead of time that she was having connection issues. So we knew that this was a possibility because of the power outage. She had a power outage, and at least she was happy to have power back. So
right.
good.
Yeah.
There we go, Ebony. And Ebony, you were talking about women being primary caregivers.
Yes. Women are the primary percent of women who are incarcerated have children under the age of 18. And that speaks volumes. So if the mother is behind bars because she couldn't make bail, who's taking care of the children? And what that does, it leads into a spiraling staircase of mass incarceration. Children are being thrown off balance because they don't have a parent in the household, and if they don't have mom, usually that leads to other issues with the child. And when you have those issues, they're in. Can you all hear? Am I still on?
I can hear you, yes.
Okay. It leads to issues down the line for the child. So when listening at Vicki Ringer and what she had to say about abortion, and if women don't have a right to choose what they want to do with their bodies past a certain point or any point at all, what it leads to is going to lead to more and more people being incarcerated, and who has to pay for that? essentially all of us have to pay for that. And you look at the amounts that it costs to pay for someone that's in prison, it averages, and that varies from state to state, between $18,000 and $30,000 per person to be incarcerated. So what it ends up being is being prisons, or a person being in prison, is great business for someone else. And it's right off of off of the backs of the taxpayers. There are many people, so if it costs $30,000 to house someone who is in jail, some people don't even make $30,000, but that's what they are charging for a person to stay in jail. And that affects women on a major level. So really today, when I was asked to be on, I was sort of expecting for it to be conversational. So
yeah, I can ask you questions. And look, we have
the internet being out. Yeah, please ask questions.
Yes. Okay. So hi, Jenny. Do you want to say hi real fast? And then I have a question.
I'm just here as a backup. I'm super.
I didn't want people to think you were, lingering.
Just creeping. Yeah. No, I'm super sick, but I am definitely here as a backup, just because Ebony's Wi-Fi is probably winter stormed right now. But I'm here if you need me.
Thank you. And I'm right there with you. So is Jelena. We're both sick, but it's, the work continues. Okay, so Ebony, questions that I have are, number one, so what, you said that like 60% of women who are in jail, they're waiting for a trial. So they're there because they haven't had their trial yet, and that they obviously can't afford their bail. So I guess what I want to know is, what do you think the impacts are on like the mental health of those women who are being held behind bars, and their family, their children? I just feel like that is something that doesn't get talked about, maybe the mental health impacts of that situation.
Right. This is a women's conference, and but on the bail fund, we actually do have Deontay Winchester, who's a psychologist, and he speaks a lot on the mental health of people who are behind bars. It causes a lot of stress and anxiety because of the separation that a mother and the child would go through with being behind bars. Financially, it hurts the family, and that causes a lot of issues with the children, and that shows up time and time again. And so if a woman is behind bars, and there are women that go into jail pregnant, and so that's not even to mention that prenatal care, the proper prenatal care, isn't given to women when they are behind bars, which is a problem. So if Roe versus Wade is being challenged right now, then we also have to think about, I see a question there, what's going to happen to a woman if she loses her baby behind bars because she couldn't get that care that she needs. So it impacts not only the woman, it impacts the family, the children greatly, because we have to think about what's going to happen to those children while they're behind bars.
I think your connection might be going out, Ebony. It's hard to hear you.
Because they could not afford bail. They're nonviolent crimes, just to be specific. There's a question, but I'm actually not able to see. I'm sorry about that, guys. We had a power outage earlier, so I'm happy just to be back on it just for a second even. So it says here, do you feel that the bail system is more of an attack on low-income women as a whole, being that the criminalization impacts not being able to pay traffic violations or minor possession is seen differently than the person with money. Yes, that is so absolute. I believe that is true, Ty. It is an issue of the have and the have-nots. You know, if a woman cannot post her bail and she's not able to get out, it's criminalizing people for not having the money. And usually these crimes were drug related or property related, and they criminalize a person because they could not simply get out of jail to be home or to be at work with their family, so that they can seek counsel, so that they can prepare for a court date whenever that does happen.
So there's a question on Facebook, Ebony, from Damien, and he said, "Thank you so much for representing the bail fund in such an eloquent way." That was kind, Damien. Question, can you please draw the link between slavery, Jim Crow, and mass incarceration? So he's going to put you on the spot, and I expect nothing less from him.
Okay, repeat the question again, because I'm not able to see it on my side.
Yeah, so Damien wants to know if you can draw the link between slavery, Jim Crow laws, and mass incarceration.
That's a deep question.
Yeah, it is. It's a very deep question.
Matt, since Dr. Sasha is on the line here, I also want her to jump in on this, because that is her background in the law. So first of all, mass incarceration is legalized slavery, and that is part of it. It allows an entity, the government, to enslave a person because of the law. So, you know what, Damien should have never put me on the spot like this, but it is definitely tied together. One basically leads to the next. And really what I'll just have to say on that is jail, and also holding bail over a person's head just to be able to get out so that they can await their trial, is a direct link to slavery and controlling the people, and especially those who don't have, which I failed to mention that at least almost half of women that are in jail are African American. So it's a modern day slavery. Essentially, that's what it is. Bail, in my opinion, needs to be outlawed. But that's what it is. It's a moneymaker. It's no more different than from slavery, from sharecropping. It's just a nice way of saying, yes, a person's still enslaved. They're still indebted to someone else because they can't afford to have their own. Jennifer, are you there?
I'm here, yes. Sorry, I sound awful. But yeah, of course, Ebony, I would just echo everything that you just said. You know, of course, the link from slavery to our modern day slavery, which is mass incarceration and the prison system, is I think I want to say it's clear, but it's clear to those of us who know about it. It's not clear to most people because most people don't know about it. And so when I teach my corrections class, for instance, I talk about how we have this rich history in our country of setting up our system in a way that is designed to continue to oppress people of color. And our current carceral state, our current state of corrections, our current state of criminal justice is just that. It's simply an extension. In my corrections class and sometimes my criminology classes, one of the best documentaries that I can find to have them watch is 13th. And that, I think, does a really good job of making that clear connection between the history of slavery and how we got to where we're at right now with our state of incarceration. slavery is illegal except, right? Except in the instance of when someone is incarcerated for a crime, and then it's not illegal. And so really all we did as a society, as a country, was shift that language to where it continued to benefit those who are already in power and continue to oppress those who have always been oppressed. And so I think that link is quite clear when you know about it, of course. So I would echo everything that Ebony just said. I think she's doing a fantastic job. And I'm just glad that the Horry County Bail Fund is here being represented. We are working hard to try to even the playing field a little bit more for our neighbors in Horry County. And also everything that Ty's mentioning in the chat is correct as well, that when we have a cash bail system, we are really only saying that you can commit a crime if you're wealthy and it's not really a crime for you, because then you can just get out of jail and wait your trial, or pay a fine and get out of it, or pay a wealthy, or pay a lawyer if you're wealthy. But for low income individuals who can't purchase their freedom, it becomes a holding cell, and it becomes detrimental to them in their lives. And as Ebony stated, especially women who tend to be the primary caregivers in their families. And so it really is this really slippery slope that we see. And so yeah, so I'm just glad that we're here being able to represent that bail fund, and thank you, Ebony, for that as well.
Well,
I'm
thank
so
you.
sick. I'm so sorry. I sound awful.
You don't sound that bad, so don't. You probably sounds worse in your head, but I can tell you're a little sick, but you don't sound that bad. So
Okay, thank you.
That was great. That was great in what she said. And really, Damien's question sort of kind of led a little bit away from the women aspect. But one thing that I do have to note to sort of address what Damien was talking about, I want to believe, and I'm not looking at the statistics now because it's not here in front of me, of the total population in America, Black people, the population is about 12% of the entire US population. In respect, that's a small amount. But when you really start talking about the impact of what it means, there almost half of the whole population is incarceration. So that just speaks. And so when you begin to start thinking, if 12% of the complete US population, and you break that down to almost half of the population is incarcerated, then you're going to break it down to how many women are incarcerated on top of that. And these folks, again, like we said, about 60% in prison because they can't make bail. We definitely have to things, which is why we do have the organization, the bail fund in place to help anyone. I do appreciate the opportunity for coming on, speaking with you all about this. And I look forward to being here and hearing what the rest of the women have to say. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you so much. And I just had some thoughts before we switch gears. So the first thought is that we had Professor Matt Wilkinson of sociology on multiple times. And I know at one point in time, I don't remember exactly what the topic was, but he had said some data. It was from, I think, New York City. And it was that they're Black people, and I think we were specifically talking about men at that point, but Black men were not committing crimes at any higher rates than white men, but they were being, stopped and frisked, and they were being, arrested way higher of a rate than white men. So I think it would be interesting for the future if, Ebony and Dr. Schlosser and Damien and maybe Matt, if he's watching, I have him on retainer and I owe him like 50 coffees at this point in time, come on to talk about all of this. And I think that would be a very relevant topic for y'all. And even if you wanted to bring in anyone else from the bail fund that we haven't talked with yet, obviously I want Jenny and I want Ebony and I want Damien, but bring in someone else who we haven't met yet. And then my second thought, and I wish Ebony was still on for this, but Jenny, you're here. So Mother's Day coming up in May. You might already be thinking about something like this, but maybe some sort of like push to raise funds to get mothers out of jail who are just there because, they can't pay their bail. And we have a bunch of women on here right now who are with different organizations who could maybe work together to do something for Mother's Day. I am volunteering, everybody. So sorry.
Definitely. No, I think that's a fantastic idea. And we are, as a bail fund, looking to do more pushes like that. So for things like Father's Day, Mother's Day, and then every day. But especially to help people understand that there are people who are currently incarcerated that don't necessarily need to be, that they haven't even been found guilty of a crime yet. And I say this every time we're on, but the average bail amount in Horry County is $2,700. And so we need significant contributions and significant donations from our neighbors to be able to bail anyone out at all. And so anyone who is at all interested should go to our website. It's horrybailfund.org. And look at it. And I will always jump at a chance to be on GSAT Live with any of the people you just mentioned, and you, Ashlyn. So thank you so much for this platform and for inviting us today.
Thank you so much. Do you have any final thoughts or final words that you want to say? I'm glad you plugged the website. I know you guys are on Venmo or Cash App too. Anything else that you want people to know?
Yeah, we're on Venmo and Cash App, and it's at horrybailfund.org, or Venmo and Cash App is just at Horry Bail Fund. And so people can find us there as well. We are actually a sponsored program of Ebony's 501c3 7 Dimensions. And so check her nonprofit out as well. And fill out the contact form. If you go to our website, there's a contact form. If you're interested in volunteering with us, even if you can't, donate financially, we are absolutely looking for more people to help us get the word out, to help us manage our social media presence, and to kind of just help us do the work on the ground. So I would be more than happy to, if somebody was able to reach out.
Awesome. Well, we are definitely going to connect about the two things that I just brought up, and we will definitely look for other ways that we can work together. There's a million different, I feel like, topics that we could go on, and talk about things that relate to the bail fund and what y'all do. And I'm really glad that you guys were able to start one. We've needed it for years. I remember a couple years ago, Damien and I had broached the topic to the former ACLU executive director, Susan Dunn, and she had told us that it would be better to find attorneys who would do pro bono work. And that was the extent of our, research into that topic. And then I know after the murder of George Floyd, when there was all of the protests, there were many people being arrested for breaking curfew in Myrtle Beach. Lorraine Woodward, our treasurer, she orchestrated ways to bail out those people. And so we bailed out, I think, 3 people at that time. And so I I know how these fines that they get hit with can be ridiculous, So imagine people can't afford $400 or $500. I think it's 60% of Americans can't afford a $1,000 emergency. So where are they going to get this $2,700 that is the average for Horry County? So we appreciate your work, and everyone who's watching, if you have not donated yet, join me in donating. I will drop my receipt of my donation in the comments whenever I get a minute. And Damien dropped the Cash App. Damien, if you could drop the website too, please, in the comments, I would appreciate it because I can't find it right now. Thank you, Jenny. Thanks for coming on this minute. We love you and appreciate you.
Thank you. Love you all too.
All right. So before we get into our next speaker, you guys know that we are obviously running behind. I ramble, and Vicki Ringer was rambling, and she was a very popular guest with tons of questions. You guys all wanted to know everything about these abortion bans. So I wanted to mention that we have a new abortion fund for South Carolina. It is the Palmetto State Abortion Fund. I helped start it with my bestie, Deidre. She worked with me on the Bernie campaign. This was her idea. She had this idea last year, and no one that she brought it to wanted to really do anything about it until she brought it to me. And thankfully, because of Lorraine Woodward, who is our GSAT treasurer, I knew a little bit about incorporating and starting 501c3s. So we got that rolling. We have helped one client so far. Today is our official launch. We've launched our GoFundMe platform to raise the seed money that we want to have in reserves for future clients. We raised a little bit extra from GSAT to file the paperwork. So we are officially just waiting for me to get a letter from the IRS saying that we are tax exempt. We have everything else. We've got the EIN, we've got the approval to be a nonprofit with the state. Now we're just waiting for the federal exemption form. And I don't know if any of the other board members are watching, but we have Talisa Effinger from Conway. We have Victoria Edwards from Columbia, Kurt Shoemate from Columbia, Wayne Borders from West Columbia, and Nick Rubin from North Charleston. So I got together with some of the best organizers that I know in the state, and they helped put this together for me and Deidre. So I am going to put all that information in the chat on Facebook. If you're not watching on Facebook, just find the Palmetto State Abortion Fund on Twitter or Instagram or Facebook. And we are on Cash App. It is just PS Abortion Fund. And we are looking to raise $2,000 by March 1st to get all of this going. So we appreciate any and all donations. And if you want to help out, on our link tree, there is a form you can fill out, or you can contact me directly. We are working on building out our volunteer, community organizer, community advisor partnership program to where we connect with different members of the community and bring in new ideas and different ways to provide services for people. So that is my spiel. Next, Jelena, I don't know if you are watching still. Will you turn your camera back on if so? Thank you. Okay, cool. So I'm going to go quiet and I'm going to let Jelena introduce the amazing Ianna Seethaller. I don't know how to say your last name. I'm so sorry.
It's Seethaler, but you're very close. All right, awesome. Well, we are super excited to have Dr. Ianna Seethaller with us today to talk to us about women's issues. Dr. Seethaler is the director of the Women's and Gender Studies program at Coastal Carolina University. We hired her, I think, 7 years ago, 7 years ago, and she recently went up for tenure and got that, and now she's an associate professor and is tenured and powerful. So we're so excited and honored to have her with us today. So, we'll just go ahead and turn things over to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jelena and Ashlyn, for the invitation and for you all to be here and share this cold afternoon with all of us in community. I already learned so much on this call, so I'm super excited to jump in. I figured that it's obviously so important, as we learned today, to talk about women's bodies and about reproductive health and women's wellness on this anniversary of Roe v. Wade. It's important to protect Roe v. Wade, but I thought that I would use my time and maybe call on all of us, and specifically as white women who have been really centered in conversations and have mostly historically benefited from conversations around abortion and women's wellness, and that I would call on us to, in our activism, really adhere more to the holistic concept of reproductive justice. So I just want to chat a little bit about that. I talk a lot about that in my classes, and it informs my research. And I'm because of that, I'm really excited to see that more folks are using the term, and I don't mean this as an outright criticism, but sometimes I think that we use the term because it sounds, it makes us sound woke. But the term in and of itself oftentimes still remains rather nebulous. And so what I wanted to start with is actually just a definition of the concept and the framework, really. It's more to me than just a concept. It's really a framework that guides my activism and my research and my teaching. And in my definition, I'm informed by a Black women-led organization called Sister Song coming out of Georgia. If you haven't heard about them or haven't engaged with them a lot, they would definitely be an organization. I mean, if we're throwing out ideas for organizations to support in whichever way you're able to, even if it's just amplifying the work that they're doing, Sister Song is definitely an important organization to support. And I'll just read you some definitions. I mean, I'm the teacher here, so I'm going to read you some definitions that have been really crucial in helping me apply the framework. So Sister Song claims that reproductive justice challenges laws and policies that deny people the right to control their bodies, interfere with their reproductive decision-making, and ultimately prevent many people from being able to live with dignity in safe and healthy communities. And it's really that last aspect that I want to dive into a little bit more, since we've heard quite a bit about, bodies and health, which is awesome. So I love that I'm kind of here in this lineup to build on what's already been said. Reproductive justice looks at how immigration, incarceration, gentrification, and other processes and practices shape the sexual and reproductive lives of women and individuals, for example, by deepening white supremacy. And it supports marginalized communities who are limited in their privilege, power, and resources. So, when we're talking about, or when we're embracing the reproductive justice framework in our activism, we need to talk more about other issues besides safe abortion. Again, that's incredibly crucial and important. So I guess really, as always in my classes, I'm here to make things more complicated, but I think in a really empowering way, hopefully so. So the first aspect I want to chat about, that reproductive justice, if we want to really practice reproductive justice that, is inclusive and makes our communities more equitable, then we need to look at immigration reform and asylum law reforms. And I study migration, and so I was super pleased to see that GSAT was, I don't remember, yesterday, day before, putting out some information about how the Biden administration currently is really failing asylum seekers by perpetuating Trump-era policies around asylum seekers. So again, if we want to holistically look at reproductive justice, we need to hold the current administration accountable to practice what they had promised that they would do. Because if you look at reproductive justice as creating environments with dignity that allows people to raise their children in a safe environment, then immigration reform needs to be an absolute priority. There's lots of studies that suggest that an increase in ICE rates, for example, has lowered immigrant communities' decision around, or has lowered their willingness, their desire to have children. And obviously it has created situations of family separation. I mean, all of you hopefully will unfortunately still get images of children in cages into your heads. And again, this is an issue of reproductive justice. And this is an issue that we really need to care about. The next issue that I had on my list, and that we heard already a little bit about, is obviously law reform and contacting your lawmakers. And I kind of looked at it as the issue of voting rights in general. That's obviously an incredibly crucial topic right now. And again, if you look at reproductive justice broadly, then voting rights are an absolute part of that framework, and we need to be fighting for them. Not just to save Roe v. Wade, which is obviously super important, but also to, and Ashley, you mentioned mental health earlier, to create equitable access to physical and mental health care And when we're talking about those specifically, also to guarantee that access for our trans siblings, we need affordable education. We need free childcare. We need a national family leave program. We need equal pay. All of these issues are impacting a person's decision of whether they want to become a parent or not. So all of them are part of the reproductive justice framework. We need to be fighting for the Equal Rights Amendment. Right now, the only constitutional right a woman has in the US is the right to vote. We need an equitable distribution of resources. That is reproductive justice. We need affordable housing. That is reproductive justice. We need to fight for environmental justice. As long as companies can dump toxins into the waters and environments of specifically minoritized communities, then we don't have environmental justice for sure, but also not reproductive justice. And the last point that I had on here, I was going to give a big shout out to the Horry County Bail Fund. We obviously need the abolition of the prison industrial complex that separates families and is a huge issue when it comes to reproductive justice. So again, I know that I just threw a lot at you, but I think that sometimes it's easier for us to just latch onto one topic. It seems like it's more manageable. Abortion is an important topic. Reproductive rights and access to reproductive health are a huge topic. But if that is the only topic we care about, then we kind of turn our feminism into this one-trick pony, and that's not how we will eventually hopefully achieve lasting social transformation. And that might sound overwhelming and exhausting. I know this from looking into my students' faces in the classroom. Ty might be able to attest to this, but women are multifaceted human beings, and so our feminism, which is supposed to support everybody and not just women, also needs to be multifaceted, and if we really want to bring about systemic change. So I feel like we learned a lot today about different organizations to support. So I call on you all to keep educating yourselves. That's obviously the business that I'm in. So if I can ever help with providing any kind of materials or, chat with you about theories or concepts, you all can find me on the Coastal website. If you just search for Women's and Gender Studies, I pop up. Support organizations however you can. I understand that maybe might not be in a financial way, but as Dr. Schlosser was saying earlier, lots of organizations are looking for volunteers to help them. Contact your legislators, obviously, and speak up and have those tough conversations. Don't shy away from them, and be brave and be daring. And hopefully that helped a little bit in terms of just some information around reproductive justice. Thank you all so much for being here. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Yeah. I have questions, and I want to defer to Bev first, because Bev, I think before you jumped on, didn't you mentioned something in the comments about the ERA when Vicki was talking? Do you want to maybe ask that to Ina, and then maybe Allison, whenever it's finally her turn, she can also answer it.
Well,
Ina
it was a theoretical question because I know what I think. I really wonder if we would even be fighting abortion issues again, or reproductive rights again, had we ratified the ERA. And we're back at it again. It's time to really get serious and make a huge push for us to ratify the ERA. Women do not have equal rights in the Constitution, and it's as simple as that. And they can't, once that amendment is made, they can't take that away. They can change laws, they can challenge laws, but they can't challenge amendments easily. And so I think that's a big issue for us, is to get the ERA passed, because it's affiliated with a lot of the issues that women are fighting today and have been fighting forever. I mean, it was first introduced in 1923, come on. It was passed by Congress in the 40s. So I just, it's just time.
Yeah, I mean, I 100% agree with what Beth is saying. I mean, I guess I'm a little more pessimistic about once it's an amendment, there won't be any issues, which I think what we're seeing right now exactly with the voting rights issues that we're having. But it's a start. It's better than nothing. And it definitely would be hugely helpful to hold people accountable. I'm hoping.
Right. Oh, I'm not saying there won't be any issues,
right.
but I'm just wondering if they'd be at this level.
Right.
And it's
agree.
It's constant. We have been fighting reproductive rights as long as I've been an adult and before, as long as I can remember as being an adult. And so I just, I think it's time that we look at that amendment, and it might help us a little, and certainly wouldn't be relying on one Roe versus Wade law to protect us on the reproductive rights.
I saw a look in Jelena's eyes that she had something she wanted to add, but I don't know. You are muted, Jelena.
Oh no, I'm fine. I mean, I think if we've watched hopefully everybody's watched the Miss America series to get a sense of the controversy of why it's not passed yet. And I see it as still an uphill battle. So there's a lot of there's enough misinformation out there about what feminism is about that's still flying around that is making it going to continue to make it hard.
Yeah, there's a lot of misinformation about abortion as well, as we all know. I guess we just have to keep fighting the fight, but I think it's not dead yet.
I liked that you brought up all the different points, and I'm glad that you defined what reproductive justice is. I know a lot of people seem to they get that confused, and I have those images of children in cages in my mind permanently. So it's a lot. I know when I volunteered for the Family Justice Center, which if people aren't familiar with that is the domestic violence services for Horry and Georgetown County. A lot of what we talked about was how in the training was how undocumented women are super hesitant to come forward with any abuse because they don't want either themselves to be deported or even their partner, if their partner also is undocumented, still the father of their children potentially, they don't want their family to be split up in different countries. So we had GSAT went to J. Reuben Long, the detention center, a couple years ago when it first came out that our sheriff's department was going to be cooperating with ICE under this 287G program. I tried to make the point that, it doesn't make our community safer if, women and other people aren't coming forward with, crimes that are happening to them, abuse that's happening to them because they fear that they're going to be deported. And that did not work, obviously. We have an ICE office in our airport. So it's a lot of different things that come together. And so if you could just define reproductive justice one more time for the viewers, and I think that'd be great, just because it's complex, I think more complex than people realize.
Yeah, I'll do that. And then I'll comment on the examples that you gave, because there's so much more to add to the immigration issue. So I think most cohesive definition that I found and that I use a lot is that reproductive justice challenges laws and policies that deny people the right to control their bodies, interfere with their reproductive decision making, and ultimately prevent many people from being able to live with dignity in safe and healthy communities. And I really love that one. I think it's just, it's applicable, but also in a way that shows that there's still concrete issues, and that it's not like this wishy-washy, anything counts, right? So I always find that super helpful. Ashlyn, I was just gonna add to the issues that you added to the connection with immigration. I mean, there's also, if we're talking about asylum laws, there's still huge controversy that, for example, fleeing a gendered violence or a sexualized violence situation does not count as grounds for getting asylum in a lot of countries, right? So, which to me is always a great sign that a lot of international laws and immigration laws are still so rooted in patriarchal understandings of who is a migrant, of who gets to seek refuge, and that you get to seek refuge, if you're like a fighter in a war, right? So it's militarization has to do with this. I mean, it's really huge. And then if we're talking about, and in no way, shape, or form am I blaming the support systems that we do have, but because they're so underfunded, there's a lot of issues with them not being able to provide services for folks, for example, who don't speak English, or that have other communication issues. And of course, this is something that Kimberly Crenshaw, that's actually what she rooted her understanding of intersectionality in. Not to throw more theory at y'all, but if you haven't read any Kimberly Crenshaw yet, I would definitely suggest you do that, because she used immigration, and I would argue reproductive justice, which she didn't call it that at the time, but she uses that connection as her kind of case study to talk about intersectionality.
Yeah, that definitely. And Ty mentioned in the chat, sign language. Ty, do you want to expand on why you mentioned that? Have you seen anything at Coastal or anything in your day-to-day life?
I just, from just like, what was saying, is just kind of like, it just is rooted in ableist like culture that we're supposed to, we don't speak other languages, and we don't teach sign language, and we don't teach ways to communicate with people. So how do we expect them to communicate with us what's going on and what they need from us when we barely take the time out of our lives to understand what they're saying? So I think that's just kind of what I was saying. Ina's a doctor here though. So.
Ma'am. So I had to call on you because I wanted you to give your thoughts, and they're good thoughts.
Yeah, and I mean, the resources, not having resources is obviously a huge deal for a lot of these organizations, right? So it's not, it's a systemic issue. We're not blaming individual organizations for not being able to provide those services, right? But we're coming back to, as you said, Ty, ableist, patriarchal understandings of whom we're allowed to provide resources for, and that's obviously a huge issue, and that's really what we need to tackle. But in order for that to happen, again, we just really need to be intersectional, and we need to tackle a lot of issues at the same time, which is hugely exhausting, and that's how they get us. But that's why reproductive justice really speaks to me, because it embraces that intersectionality. And I think that's the only way for actual lasting transformation.
Yes. Do you have any recommendations for like a way forward, or like someone who maybe needs like an action item to make? Sometimes people just need to be told like what to do, like, hey, yeah, I care about this, but like, what do I do? So a lot of people I know need to be specifically asked to do something. So maybe you have an idea for like what they could do to help.
Yeah, I mean, in addition to all the things that were brought up, like voice your concerns about bills that are being proposed, and that doesn't just apply to the abortion bills or the reproductive rights, birth control, issues, but also about immigration law, about support the Horry County Bail Fund. The only more concrete, again, as an educator, concrete suggestion that I would really have is really look up Sister Song, look up their website. They actually have a lot of concrete action items on their website of how you can get involved, how you can apply, the concept to your own activism, and where you can keep educating yourself. So that would be, I guess, in addition to the, contact contact people, voice your concerns about laws, and support organizations. My call is always keep educating yourself. So, I mean, thank you for everybody who's here right now. You're clearly doing that. And I really appreciate you for doing that. But a real cool group to look more into would be Sister Song out of Georgia. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being with us, for sharing your thoughts. I am familiar with them, but that was just a reminder to go back and look more and do more. So thank you. I appreciate that.
Thanks everybody, and thanks for all you do. Obviously, that's going out to the whole GSAT team. Thank you so much.
Yes. Thank you, and we will definitely be reaching out to you soon. I'm going to take you up on that.
That's great.
Coffee, pick your brain, all that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye. So next we have Melissa Moore from Wren. Melissa, if you are able to join now and turn your camera on, we would love to see you. Hi. Awesome. Thank you for joining us. I will let you just kind of introduce yourself and then talk about, whatever we went over, whatever you want, whatever Wren's doing. And I know that there's always more to be said about the whole reproductive health care that we haven't said so far.
Sure. Thanks for having me. I've been taking notes. I've learned a lot from the speakers as I thaw out. So on this anniversary of Roe, I was just doing some street outreach. So some volunteers and I hit the streets of downtown Charleston to hand out flyers about an event that's coming up and have some conversations with folks about reproductive freedom and what's happening and how our rights are under attack, but also some things they can do to get involved. Had some really great conversations, y'all. So never ever underestimate the power of community outreach, getting your feet out on the pavement and talking to people. That really does help, especially in these times where we're so isolated. The pandemic has really made it difficult for us to get out and to connect with each other. So anytime we can get out on the street and do some outreach is always a good thing. So a little bit about me. I am the Low Country Manager for WREN, Women's Rights and Empowerment Network. I am based in Charleston, but I would love to travel anywhere around the Low Country and honestly around the state to have conversations with folks about dreaming and scheming and ways we can make South Carolina better. I'm born in South Carolina, raised in South Carolina. I went to school in South Carolina and I went to college in South Carolina. I'm very much dedicated to this state. It is my home. It will always be my home. And I want it to feel like a home. It has not always felt like a home to me, even though, I am rooted here. So before I tell you more about myself, I want to tell you a little bit about WREN if you're not familiar. So WREN is a South Carolina-based network. We're coming on our 5-year anniversary. Our mission is to advance the health, economic well-being, and rights of South Carolina's women, girls, gender-expansive people, and their families. I was so glad to hear people talk about reproductive justice, to talk about intersectionality. I'm so glad you had someone from the Bail Fund on the call. I learned a lot. I always support all our bail funds. So I'm very glad to hear that there's one in Horry County that I will be supporting. So I have a body that can get pregnant, but as a genderqueer and a non-binary person, I don't identify as a woman. I have sometimes felt erased from conversations about abortion justice, which is why I'm so happy to work with my colleagues at WREN and also our coalition partners. Y'all are awesome. I always feel included. My colleagues at WREN, we've all been sort of brainstorming about deepening our analysis, expanding our practice to cover the women's rights framework and also a larger gender justice framework. So under the leadership of our policy director, some of you may know Ashley Lido, we developed a gender justice policy agenda framework that includes women and gender expansive people, LGBTQ plus folks, people who have been racialized. So, racial justice is a part of that. Disability justice is also a part of that. So I want to post a link here. We're on Zoom, so I can post this link in the chat, but I know some folks on Facebook, they can't access our chat, but if anyone wants to post the link to our gender justice policy agenda framework in the Facebook comments would be awesome. So it's a holistic approach to the work that we do. It's so important that we think about why the state might have an interest in controlling our reproductive lives. Why might the state have an interest not only in controlling our reproductive lives, but in restricting the movement of trans people or even the rights of trans people to exist in public life. The same people who are pushing for abortion bans are also trying to ban trans folks from playing sports, from going to the bathroom, from just existing in public life. So we all have a stake in working together to dismantle these things that affect our lives. And as I was thinking about why might the state, have an interest in controlling our public life, I did a little bit of research, and these bans are rooted in the lineage of eugenics. And if folks aren't familiar with the term eugenics, it was a movement that was like a pseudoscientific project that aimed to encourage reproduction among white middle class folks while discouraging or preventing population growth among people of color, poor people, disabled folks, people who are deemed unfit. So those are our roots here in the United States, this colonial project. And if the roots of the tree are poison, the fruits of the tree are poison. So these things that we're dealing with right now have this lineage. It is no wonder that we're all dealing with this stuff right now with these bans. So right now, people who can get pregnant, queer people, working class people, poor people, immigrants, youth, people with disabilities, and BIPOC folks are being used as pawns in a political game. And I don't know, I don't want to be red meat for anybody's base. I'm a human being and I deserve to have a life worth living, as we all do. So being used as wedges, in some kind of political game to divide communities that might otherwise be united, that's not something I want to play. As I think through, okay, what are the big picture intentions of the folks who would attempt to control my reproductive life and my ability to express myself through my gender, I really want to encourage both myself and everyone I work with to think through our own bigger picture. What does liberation look like for our communities and our partners? What is our bigger picture? It's certainly not playing defense all the time. I constantly feel like I feel like a person to whom things are being done, things are happening to me all the time. How, as I try to envision a way to fight back against these things, I also want to encourage our community to think about what is it that we want? What is our bigger picture? What are our goals working together? So that's a question that I kind of want to put out for everyone to ponder as we fight together. But as we fight together, we will hopefully become more united and will build relationship with each other. So that's kind of what I've been out in the streets doing today. So if I could just give a little plug, y'all, we have this event. I don't know if you can see, let me see if I did. Oh, you can't see because my camera, hold on a second. Y'all are gonna see my laundry.
Get it a little closer.
Hold on a sec. Okay, now you're gonna see my laundry, so don't judge me. Okay.
There we go, now I can see it.
There we go. So we're doing a film screening in a panel discussion of Jane, an abortion service. It's a documentary that was made about this collective of amazing women who provided safe, illegal abortions before Roe v. Wade was in place. So we're going to show where we've been, but also what's the status of abortion access in South Carolina right now, and what can we do to help preserve and protect abortion access, regardless of what happens with the Supreme Court. So I'm very excited. Our partners are Planned Parenthood and the College of Charleston Women's and Gender Studies program and Soda City Bail Fund, because these issues are all connected. So we're going to do this screening in Charleston on February 27th. I hope everybody can make it out, folks who are in Charleston. We're going to try to do more screenings around the state as well. I also, I know that Vicki did a really amazing job talking about the bills and the legislation that we're dealing with. I'm going to post a link here to a blog that we have on our website about the bills, but also links to sign up to testify. And there's a link for a testifier training that we're doing on Monday night. So if anybody, you got to sign up to testify. It's in person only, but sign up to testify by 5 o'clock Monday. And our training on testifier, like messaging and writing and delivering your testimony, is at 6 o'clock. It's going to be at 5 o'clock Monday. And our training on testifier, like messaging and somehow I'm hearing an echo. Is anybody hearing that?
Sorry, I think that was me.
I was like, wait, who's repeating me?
You're good. You're good
yeah,
now.
Cool. And it can be a little intimidating sometimes if you've never done it before, but it really, once you do it, it's awesome. It becomes like super easy. So hopefully, if folks want to learn how to deliver and write testimony, please join us for the training on Monday night. And if you're interested in doing any like just flyering or street outreach or anything, I'm going to drop my email address. Let's see, rn.org. Yeah, so there's my email address is in the chat. Hopefully it'll get posted on Facebook. And I know that I don't want to take up any more time because I know Allison has a lot of really amazing stuff to talk about. And I know y'all at Planned Parenthood are doing phone banking and stuff. And I want to sign up to help y'all phone bank as well. So I encourage everybody to phone bank with Planned Parenthood and to come get out in the street and have conversations with folks and testify. But that's pretty much what I got, y'all.
I actually have a question.
Sure.
So I really like how you brought up the LGBTQ like plus community just in the whole realm of like reproductive justice, because we leave groups out all the time. And, like you were saying, it's very white, middle class centered. But I think we're really forgetting like who is often and mostly going to be affected by these bills. But my question that the Social Justice Club at CCU has come up with is, being that there's already so much stigma around trans rights regarding birth control access, abortion, how do you feel that these bills are going to specifically affect the way that this group of people both receives access, but further is going to instill more stigma around reproductive justice in the LGBTQIA plus community? And I'll put it in the chat too, because I know it's a big question.
Yeah, that is okay. Yes. So these bills enshrine stigma from basically these legislators are supposed to be our leaders, right? These are supposed to be people's role models. Children visit the state house and they look up to these legislators. So when you try to pass bills that limit people's reproductive rights, that limit the abilities of trans people to live in public or even to join public life, it legitimizes it. It gives it, it gives the stigma teeth, and honestly, the ways that we treat our LGBTQ folks in our community is, it's really a social death sentence. When you think about it, like, that's what it does. And this is why so many trans folks can't see a future for themselves. They can't, they so often take their own lives. And I am tired of death dominating the headlines about my community. So, and then when I see things like abortion bans and things like that, it stigmatizes something that is healthcare. It's basic healthcare. And in a pandemic, why are we doing anything that would limit people's access to healthcare? So anything that would limit a person's access to, honestly, for some people, a life-saving treatment, also would lead to more death in our community. Do we want to see more death in South Carolina? Do we want to see more women dying in South Carolina, more trans people dying in South Carolina? No. But these bills, that's all they're doing. At best, they stigmatize people. At worst, they're going to cause death.
Melissa, I really liked how you talked about being a political pawn, because that's exactly what we are, and that's exactly what they're doing. They're feeding on fear and ignorance, and that's really what we're fighting, is fear and ignorance. And I don't know how we'll ever win anything, when our rights in any way, if we can't combat fear and ignorance, because that is what the politicians are using. And abortion's is a hot topic. I like the idea of using reproductive rights because it takes away a little bit of the stigma that abortion carries. And I think we need to focus a lot on educating people that don't want to be educated. And that's the real problem, I believe. They don't want to know the truth. They don't want to know the facts. And we've made it's been harder and harder to find the truth over the last 5-10 years. So, thank you for sharing your thoughts.
I think that we're actually stronger than we think we are, because the folks who are working so hard to take away our rights, to violently enforce the stripping of our communities of our rights, they wouldn't do that if they didn't feel threatened.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
But it still feels like we're constantly fighting the fear and ignorance instead of what really needs to be focused on. Yeah. And I don't know. But I agree with you. I do think we're strong, and I think we're stronger together, and by fighting it together. So, but thank you for sharing your thoughts on this.
Sure. And I think that the antidote to fear and ignorance is connection and outreach. And, it's okay to be afraid, but we cannot let fear control us, because, when we can let go of that fear, then we can't be controlled by fear. So I think doing things like this, and, the phone banking that Allison leads, and the, getting out, having conversations in the community, the clinic defenders who go out every day and, come up against folks who are anti-abortion, those are that's the type of stuff we got to keep doing.
It's true.
Thank you. Oh my goodness, my internet has been unstable the past 15 minutes. So I've just been sitting here listening and taking all of it in. I was wondering if this is obviously is not reproductive justice, healthcare, or abortion related, but there are those couple anti-CRT type bills going on right now. Melissa, do you have any insight on them? Because I feel like we'd be remiss to not mention, with everyone going to our legislators to, talk about and push back against the specific abortion bills and the healthcare bills, if we didn't talk about those anti-truth bills in the education.
Yeah, there's a really strong coalition of folks fighting for truth in education, that, so this whole push to limit the ability of us to teach truthful history in our schools it's not surprising, it's sickening. But there's a really strong group of folks, like of parents, of community leaders and school board members who are fighting these, censorship in our schools. And it's all connected. So a lot of us are the same people who are sitting here on this call are going to be showing up to the school boards. And if you have the energy, of course, take care of yourself, but if you have the capacity to tune into your local school board meetings, please do, because that is also a very, this is a battleground right now. There are a lot of people who are organizing on the side of censorship in schools, getting people all riled up to come to this board meeting. So we need to make sure that we're going to our school board meetings. If you have the capacity, please go to your city and county council meetings too. Go to your state legislature, to the South Carolina State House as well. If any folks in Charleston are interested in organizing groups to go to school board meetings and to city council and county council meetings, I would be happy to work with y'all. And also share information about the Truth in Education, the coalition that's working, against the censorship in the schools as well. The ACLU has done a really good job of
No, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say the ACLU has done a really good job of convening that coalition for Truth in Education, as have the Black Parents Association here in Charleston, and our school improvement councils.
I will find the bill names. I'll drop them in the Facebook comments for people so they have that. And they can also, if you're writing emails, you may as well just pen another one and also tell your legislators that you're opposed to this. And like Melissa said, school board meetings, at least in Horry County, no one really goes to them. You have to sign up to speak in advance. They will not let you speak if you just show up, and you have to do it by a certain time that day. They give you I think 3 minutes, and they won't give you any longer. But no one goes to them. So they don't ever hear from people who oppose their votes, their ideas, what they're doing. And they don't always answer emails. I have emailed them multiple times, because it's not always accessible for me to go, having 3 kids and 2 of them under 2. And I get answers from the same 3, and then the rest of the board ignores me. So for those who can go in person, it has always been more effective for us when we've been able to show up in person and let them know that we're not going to tolerate the things that they're doing. So yeah, I definitely appreciate that thought being brought up. I'm sorry, I have a little bit of COVID brain fog still going on right now. And it's just hard for me to concentrate, but this was just such an important event that I wanted to make sure that we continued to go through it. Jelena's also feeling under the weather. Thankfully, we have Bev and Ty who are here for backup for me and Jelena, who are sickly. But thank you so much, Melissa. If you have anything else you want to add about anything at all about Wren or anything, if you want to come do some work for Wren and Horry County, we will be happy to find canvassers to come with you. Please, just let us know anything that you need. We've got many willing participants who will help you out.
Let's do it. We also have a bill that's proactive, y'all, that paid family leave for state employees, and we're trying to get a subcommittee meeting on it, trying to get a hearing on the bill. So Yeah.
Yes, hearing more about the potentially good bills, I think will help balance out all of the horrific ones that we are trying to combat because, people need a little bit of joy as well as the never-ending outrage that we seem to go through in all of these years and sessions in the legislature and the news cycles. So thank you for bringing that up. I'll find all of that and I will drop that in the Facebook chat while we hear from the lovely Allison. Thank you. Thank you, Melissa, for being here. I don't know if you have to hop off, but if you don't, feel free to stay. And Allison, thank you so much. I don't know if you can hear me or if you're frozen, but we would love to hear from you now. So go ahead and intro yourself and take it away.
Hi, everybody. Can you all hear me? Hopefully so. Okay. So hi, I am joining you from the kitchen dining room table today with my pink hat on. This is not my Stand with Planned Parenthood hat, but as you might imagine, as someone who works with Planned Parenthood, I end up with a lot of pink clothing. So just by way of introduction, I'm Alison Horatio. I work for Planned Parenthood South Atlantic and Planned Parenthood Votes South Atlantic. And my role is organizing program coordinator, and I am specifically focused on patient greeting in our affiliate, which covers South Carolina, North Carolina, West Virginia, and part of Virginia. And so really, what we have at hand right now with the abortion access crisis is really, I'm on the ground at least twice a week, every week, to see people arriving for abortion care. And really, that gives you a whole lot of context in terms of what people are going through, just in terms to access legal abortion care in the state of South Carolina. When we look into the future and see the need for Jane's or some group like that, and definitely the need for abortion funds, right now we know that it's already hard enough because we know that there are 3 abortion providers in the state of South Carolina. We know that people travel sometimes hours. Sometimes they have to come and stay overnight. And sometimes they are coming with family members and often with their existing children in tow. So we see every day the kind of people who need this care and who are having trouble accessing it, whether it's just by their transportation needs, their monetary needs, or the fact that they already have jobs and children and obligations in their lives. And so every time someone comes to access an abortion in the state of South Carolina, and really anywhere we provide abortions in our affiliate, they're met with protest. They're met with people who are there. And I heard us say stigma quite a bit earlier. So we hear people saying, if you change your mind, this can be reversed. That's actually one of the bills that will be heard. I'm sure you've heard, those of you on the line right now have probably heard about the bill that will be in subcommittee on Wednesday around abortion reversal. I'm sure Vicki Ringer spoke very eloquently around that. There are people standing outside Planned Parenthood every time someone accesses an abortion to try to pressure them into getting a free ultrasound that a doctor in Lexington can provide. In Charleston, I know that there is an RV that has advertisements for ultrasounds on the side of it. That RV has like paper phone numbers, like the phone number is written in paper and pasted to the side of the RV. I would just hope that people who are pregnant are not showing up and thinking that looks like a legitimate healthcare provider. But we know that people are in whatever state that they're in when they show up, and they can be vulnerable to these kinds of approaches. So I constantly work with our patient greeters to find strategies to support people as they're approaching the health center so that they don't get caught up in this stigmatizing, harassing, frankly, traumatizing experiences with protesters. I'm always looking for greeters. So if anybody on the line would be interested, I'm sure we can figure out how to get you in touch with me. And of course, we have an organizer in the Low Country in Charleston. So that's a bit about what I do every week, is help people physically on the ground access their abortion care with as little harassment as possible. I could tell you all day long about our protesters and what they do and what their focus is on. Lately, they posted a picture of my rear end on the internet. So that's out there for all to see. So, in terms of how we can fight back, because I know that part of the reason that I'm here kind of bringing up the end is to rally the troops and say, that all is not lost and there's still a fight. So we need to show up. And I think Melissa used the terms like in the streets. And with COVID, it's been difficult, but there are ways to make your voices heard. And there are strategic ways to make your voices heard. And part of that is to actually literally use your voice on the phone, because we know that when lawmakers hear from us on the phone, it's easy to ignore a tweet. It's easy to ignore an email. But when someone has to actually hear our voices and even just a snippet of a story, I support abortion access because I was a 16-year-old girl sitting in chemistry class, hoping and praying that I was not pregnant. That's my story. And so if you have some story like that, it doesn't have to be an abortion story. It just has to be like, I knew that I supported abortion access when X. Those are always great stories, and please feel free to tell them in whatever way is suitable to you. And we have people on staff. I know people on REN have staff to help you with testimony. And we want you to show up and use your voice. And we want you to call and use your voice. And we also want you to volunteer to call other supporters and make sure that they know about it, because we know that not everybody can be on this live stream on a Saturday afternoon. We know that people have jobs, people have laundry, people have kids. It's a snow day. And so we need just to get the word out, because we're probably the people who care the most. And there are lots and lots of people who care. So we just want to make sure that everybody who cares knows about what's going on and can speak up and speak out against these horrible anti-abortion bills, these horrible bills that are against the LGBTQ plus community, and horrible bills that affect our most precious resource, which is our children and their education. We care so much about that, and to have them being lied to in their public education would be just a continuation of a tragedy. So that's really all I have for right now. Are we taking questions? What are we doing? How are we supposed to do this?
Yeah, definitely questions. Anyone on Zoom who has questions, feel free to ask Allison. I'm going to check on the Facebook real quick and see if any commenters have questions, and I will be right back. So Jelena, Bev, Ty, Melissa, take it on. Ty, you might want to just read it and let her know it's in the chat.
Allison, when you have the protesters at Planned Parenthood, is there any security help?
Yes, I work closely with our head of security. I don't necessarily want to speak publicly about our security, but we have.
Right. I'm just asking if you have it, if it's existing.
If you go to Middle Drive on a day, so let's just say that you have an appointment for an abortion. If you show up at Middleburg Drive, you're not going to see, a lot of law enforcement or anything like that out there. You will see protesters, and hopefully you will see us in rainbow vest out there, helping to ensure that you have the directions that you need to get to the health center. So yes, we have a lot of security. I don't know if people are following the news, but if you have been, the Knoxville Planned Parenthood Health Center, which is not in our affiliate, but is a very neighboring health center that was burned down on New Year's Eve.
Right.
And so we definitely are in close contact with law enforcement. We definitely have security on top of things. And so I don't necessarily want to say more about that, but yeah, we do work closely with them.
Mm-hmm.
I was really surprised for you to be describing the like trailers who say they're going to give ultrasounds and stuff. Is it not illegal to like impersonate a clinician, like a doctor or nurse, like in the same way it's illegal to impersonate a police officer? I mean, I'm really surprised. That's kind of terrifying because your average person may just not know the difference.
Yeah. So I was pregnant in 2008 and 2009. And during that period of time, there was kind of a proliferation of kind of those 3D ultrasounds and that kind of thing, where you could go to the mall and get an ultrasound and just like to have a picture of your baby, right? Those things are not illegal. They're not medical advice. And say very clearly, they are not subject to HIPAA. So if someone could go into one of those things and have an ultrasound, their information would not be protected in the same way that an actual medical provider would protect their information. Mm-hmm. But a lot of people like to get those ultrasounds sort of like for like a keepsake or something. And so that is kind of the level of that these ultrasound providers are doing. But it kind of leans into, the language that these people use are, it's very gendered, right? Mom, dad, baby, heartbeat, 10 fingers and 10 toes. When it's a holiday, these people say like, oh, well, next time it's Christmas, you're going to remember that you didn't have this baby, mom. Like that's the kind of stuff that they use to really stigmatize abortion. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Manipulate.
And are these ultrasounds real? Or are they giving them real? We don't know.
They are real machines.
Yeah, I just wondered if they're somehow falsifying the information, showing the baby in
if
a later stage of development.
So they will, one of the things that we know, one of the tactics that we know that they do is that they tell you, let's just say you're 12 weeks along. Mm-hmm. They will look at the ultrasound, and say, oh, well, you're 9 weeks. And they will sort of lie to people to make them think that they are not as far along as they are. So, and they're like, well, you have time to think about it. Why don't you go home and think about it? And so they kind of like time them out.
That's terrible. That's criminal.
It is. It is.
It's not illegal.
It's about these pregnancy centers. What can be done? Like, what can we do to make sure people know that they're not places to go if they're wanting like abortion information? Because a lot of them show that they offer like pre-abortion counseling. Usually when you Google like, some, especially here, there's one called like Coastline Women's Center or something. It's one of the first things that pops up on Google if you Google like Myrtle Beach and like abortion or Horry County and abortion. So what can we do? What can we do? Well,
the opposition is well funded and well organized. That's no secret. I'm not saying anything that anybody doesn't really know. And so what they do is they have, students, interns, employees. They have people constantly going on Google and giving wrong directions to the Planned Parenthood. Right. Mm-hmm. They have people ensuring that searches for abortion in South Carolina result in their fake clinics getting the top billing. So they have people constantly working on making sure that this is what people come to when they do these searches. We kind of similar help, go to Google Maps, find Planned Parenthood. If the entrance is not where the entrance should be, submit a report to say, this is where the entrance should be. This is what the direction. Those are all helpful things. There is a website called shoutyourabortion.com, where people can both go in to do abortion storytelling, but then they also have a little bit of an activism arm where they do reviews of fake clinics. So they can go in and review a clinic and just say, this is fake. And that's something that people can do as part of their volunteer work.
Wow.
Yeah, that's
I had
exactly
no
what
idea.
strategies to like make sure that people know they're fake. Like what we could possibly do, obviously not, you know, as individuals, to expose the fake clinics for what they are, and kind of save the trauma that a person might experience going there because they don't know any better. And like you said, Allison, they use baby, they point out like body parts there yet. Like I've pregnancies, I've got 3 kids, like they do not have fingers and toes until like well into the 20-ish weeks, that are, you know, that you can see. So it's like, yeah, I'm all about we could do some specific strategy to try and make sure that these are not the things that people are utilizing. I know it's hard because we only have the 2 Planned Parenthood locations in South Carolina. I think there's a 3rd abortion clinic in Greenville. Is that right?
That's correct. There's an independent provider in Greenville still. Mm-hmm.
Are there other like OBs across the state who perform abortions in their practices?
You know, yes, there are people who provide abortion care outside of Planned Parenthood. You know, I am not as familiar with how they are provided, but you know, there are medical reasons to need an abortion. And so there are doctors who provide that outside of us.
Okay. Because
I don't think they advertise.
And it might be the laws. Yeah, that's what I was saying. Like you know, that's not anything that I've ever seen like show up, you know, as an advertised like care that you can get there. So I just, you know, obviously, and maybe in hospital settings and like emergencies, like yes, but I just didn't know if the way our laws work, if private practices are allowed to perform these services.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, if you meet the legal requirements, anybody could, right? It's just made incredibly difficult, and I think that's coming back to like what's at hand, which are these laws. They're called TRAP laws, targeted. Oh God. Anyway, so there are laws that make it harder to access abortion. After the Casey decision in, I think, 1991, you know, that allowed for more restrictions as long as it was not deemed like unreasonable or whatever. So, you know, your hallways have to be so wide, you have to have so much whatever. And, you know, in South Carolina, they have to have their like counseling 24 hours in advance. And if that doesn't happen, you can't keep your appointment. So yes, there are all of these non-medical restrictions that are put on abortion care.
Oh, yes. I think let's see, okay. So Toledo with me. She just shared on Facebook. Usually they give you the option to see the ultrasound or hear the heartbeat, but you can accidentally played the supposed heartbeats. Is there any way to hold them accountable for like violating that if you opt out and they play the supposed heartbeat, because we know that that's not actually a heartbeat. I am not a scientist, so I can't break down how it's not a heartbeat. It's just like heart activity, like heart formation activity. Not even going to go any further because it's just going to be wrong coming out of my mouth. But is there any way to hold them accountable? Because that was very traumatic for this person, and that she is still affected by this.
I'm hoping that did not happen at a Planned Parenthood health center. So yeah, I don't know, like I'd have a hard time speaking to like a specific instance around that. What I feel like we can say is that Planned Parenthood health centers provide care to the letter of the law, and also at the very same time strive to provide as much compassionate care, sensitive care as possible to people. So that's unfortunate. And speaking of the sort of heartbeat issue, I was trained as a scientist. My husband, his father, lots of our family were trained as scientists, and my father-in-law did work in heart tissue. And so one of the things that happens with any tissue that is a heart tissue, including, small groups of heart cells, is that they pulsate. And so anytime a heart cell differentiates, it's called pluripotent, from a pluripotent cell into a differentiated heart cell, it will beat. And when there are enough of them, that can be picked up on a machine.
Makes sense.
Differentiated cells does not a heart make.
Right. That makes sense. I think that some of the techs need to learn that, because I just remember whenever I was pregnant with my first child, them calling it that. And this was just at a hospital like center that you go get your imaging done. It's like, okay, until I think this past year, over all of this, bodily autonomy, anti-abortion laws that we're trying to fight. That's when I actually learned, and I never thought it through because I knew when the heart would develop, but I'm like, I didn't question that wasn't a heartbeat. So it's just propaganda to make people feel a certain way. And just to clarify, Allison, Talisa said it was not at a Planned Parenthood. It was at a clinic in another state. But so the laws there might, they're probably different, but apparently, you could turn down the ultrasound, like seeing it or hearing. Clinic violated that person's choice. So obviously it's going to be different for every state, for, I guess, in their laws and what kind of place it is. My thought, Talisa, would be that someone, if not this person who was affected by it, someone should publicize this in some sort of review, like people need to know that. Whether the person who experienced it is comfortable putting their own story out there, or whether someone else, puts it out there anonymously, like this happened to a friend, at the very least, they need to be named and shamed for it. I don't know, Allison, if you have any thoughts.
At this point in the game, I'll tell you what I've been telling some of my greeters who want to testify. At this point in the game, things are dire enough that, like, I'm inclined to say, let the wheels come off. Tell your tale, get out in the streets, say your story in whatever way that you want to say it. We have been holding back for too long. We have been pretending like it's all fine for too long. And so if you're in a place where you want to say something, you want to let something come out of your mouth, who am I to stop you? Like, right? I'm not going to. tell you, like, if you're not in a place, like if you are in a place where that's going to be re-traumatizing or just not healthy, don't do it. But if you think that like it can help, share with someone else what you had to go through, what your experiences was accessing an abortion, then by all means, do it your way. Use your words. Don't let somebody edit you. Don't let somebody stigmatize you. Say your piece. Now is the time.
I like that. I like that. I guess so. To wrap up your part of it, I have dropped everything in the Facebook comments for how people can sign up to testify, and I'm gonna just rebump that for people so that they can do it. Do you want to just one last time go over like what the need is, what y'all need help with from us, and then I'll let Jelena wrap up.
The most important thing is to flood testimony on Wednesday. We need people to go to that Google form and sign up to testify. If you don't know exactly what you're going to say yet, that's fine. We have a couple of days to work through it together. Write something up, share it with your friends, and, practice. If you can't be in Columbia on Wednesday morning, please email it into the provided email, because we just need people to know that abortion is needed in this state. And I can tell you that the people who show up to Planned Parenthood, they don't all have Bernie stickers on their cars. All right. They don't all have blue stickers on their cars. They have MAGA stickers. They have AR-15 stickers. You can see that it is not just a certain group of people who needs abortion care. Everybody shows up when they need us.
Absolutely. I won't be able to be there, but I am going to send in a letter. So that is on my to-do list, and I will get that done. I encourage everybody else to join me in doing that. And once again, I dropped the information in the Facebook chat. You can also find it. We'll put it up on our Facebook page. And if you're not on Planned Parenthood's email list, you should get on it. Allison, what's the Planned Parenthood South Atlantic website? Do you have that off the top of your head?
Go to, I think it's ourplannedparenthood.org. Yeah, something like that. I'll see if I can find it real quick. But if you look up Planned Parenthood votes South Atlantic.
Okay.
That is where you need to get started.
Planned Parenthood votes. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I will drop that as soon as
Activism.
yeah. Okay. Found it. Perfect. The other one is just for the medical side, the healthcare side.
Free. It's the healthcare side of everything. I think, if you need to make an appointment, and one of the things that people can do to support Planned Parenthood is to be a patient. I'm a patient. I go for my annual, pap smear and everything there. Please become a patient, get your birth control. We provide gender affirming hormone therapy. We provide lots of services. So please, if you're in need of that kind of care, consider having your appointment at either the Columbia or the Charleston location.
Awesome. Thank you, Allison. Thank you. Allison, is there anything else before I wrap up?
That's it.
No, just
awesome. Great.
Donate to Planned Parenthood.
Yes, donate to Planned Parenthood. I was a Planned Parenthood patient until I moved to a city where it's too far away for me to drive 2 hours. So, but can absolutely send money their way. It's important to remember that everybody has a story involving Planned Parenthood. Many, many women and many trans people do too as well. So this is an important issue. It's an important topic. It touches many, many, many people's lives. And We're grateful to all of our speakers who are here with us today. We had Vicki early on to start off talking about Planned Parenthood legislation. We heard from Ebony Hughes about incarcerated women, and also our colleague Jenny Schlusher dipped in to talk about that as well. We had Dr. Ianna Seethaller, who talked about feminism and the importance of reproductive justice, and gave us lots of things to think about in broadening our understanding of what reproductive justice involved. We have Melissa Moore to come from Wren and share with us what Wren is going to be doing with respect to this issue. And then Allison also came from Planned Parenthood and told us how we could put some boots on the ground and get involved ahead of the hearings that are going to be coming up. So we'd like to thank all of our guests who were on tonight. We're thankful for Bev, who also dropped in tonight to chat with us. And especially we're also thankful to Ty, who was here tonight to guide us through this conversation. And especially thanks to Ashlyn, who got this whole event organized online. So while having COVID. That's right. She gets bonus points for that.
Yeah. Extra stickers, cookies, coffee, anything, send it my way.
Yes, that's right. Send Ashlyn some love. All right. Well, thanks everybody for tuning in. And if you have questions, please hit up the panelists that we had on tonight. We tried to drop all their information in the Facebook chat. So please contact them. If you have additional questions, just get back to us. And thanks everyone. This is Jelena, and I'm signing off for Ashlyn with Grand Strand Action Together. And y'all have a great night and a happy Women's Day, which is what we're calling it. All right.